I know we're at 10 o'clock right now, but we're going to wait a little bit longer to let more people filter in. But welcome everyone to NYSPEP's first fall 2025 webinar series. We're grateful for everyone to be in attendance today. If everyone as they're joining could put their agency and title in the chat this morning. We have Jill Gavin and Wassa Murphy as our presenters this morning. And our topic is strategies for promoting reliable parenting information and resources for new American families. Again, as people filter in, if everyone could put their agency and title in our chat today, we'd really appreciate it so we know where everyone is from. And like I said, we have our two presenters, Jill Gavin and Wassa Murphy. And Jill is an associate director of refugee programs at Jewish Family Services of Western New York. And she's also launched her career as a picture book poet, and her books can be found at pbjellykids.com. And Wassa is the manager of family support at the Jewish Family Services of Western New York. And her journey spans from delivering babies and supporting mothers in Africa to leading family empowerment programs in Western New York. So as of right now, I have everybody in that's been in the waiting room. So if you ladies want to go ahead, it's all yours. I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate you just inviting us to do this, and nice to see a couple of familiar faces in the room here as well. So thanks everybody for being here. Like Michelle said, my name is Jill Gavin. I'm here with my colleague Wassa. We are going to introduce ourselves a little bit more in a few slides. I wanted to just kick us off first to start. Just a note, I can't see anything that's going on in the chat, so Wassa is going to be monitoring the chat for us. Wassa, please feel free to hop in anytime if there's anything happening that you think I need to know about that I might want to stop for any reason. But today we're going to be talking about strategies for promoting reliable parenting information and resources for new American families. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today, just in case anybody's got to leave early. Who are new American families? Why is it important to be able to offer tailored parenting information for these families? What is our role as parenting educators? Who are we as JFS, and what do we do in this space? What are some of the current challenges that families are facing, and particularly new American families are facing just in general as parents? And then also in terms of information and some of the misinformation that's out there. Some strategies and principles for promoting reliable information within the new American communities here. We will address talk about how to address misinformation when it does come up. And then at the end, we're also going to be sharing loads of different resources that your staff can use, that families can use, that we've come to know and trust and love over the years doing this work. So any questions before I dive into any of that? Cool. Okay. So who are we talking about today? Who are new American families? New American is sort of a term that we use to talk about kind of anybody who comes to this family who wasn't born here. So that those folks might have refugee status, they might be coming as asylum seekers, they were maybe already granted asylee status. There's lots of different legal status that dictates sort of what programming you're eligible for, how long you might be able to stay in this country. And then there's this term immigrant that sort of encapsulates all of it. So immigrant, new American, those terms are a little interchangeable. So really that's who we're talking about today, is kind of anybody who came here and maybe didn't grow up in this country, but now they're raising their family here and they're kind of working through all the challenges of that. So I'd love to just get a sense, and people can throw it in the chat. Anybody is also welcome to come off mute if anybody feels like talking at all. And just an estimate here, you might not know exact numbers, totally fine, but what percentage of families do you work with that are new Americans? Just an estimate here, just so we get a sense of what folks might be seeing in their client base. And Wasa, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing what you're seeing as it comes in the chat.
Absolutely. So far, I don't have anything.
Yeah,
Not all at once, people, not all at once.
a guess is totally fine, and it might be 0%, it might be 5%, it might be,
We have Serena. She said 20.
Okay, cool.
We have one person who have one, so that's 100% of their clients. We have
Yeah.
5%, 25%.
Okay. Okay.
It's a good
Yeah.
number.
Little bit all over the board, but typically most of the folks that like I've been connected to across New York State, it's certainly not the majority of folks that they're working with, which is a little different in our case. Okay, it looks like there's a couple more things coming in the chat, Wasa.
Yep, we have 15, 50. We have half of their population or half of their clients.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, so definitely some providers around the state that are pretty familiar to working with these families. So, we'd definitely love to hear from any of you as well throughout this session today. And then some folks that, they're kind of a little bit more on the fringe. Cool. We're going to talk a little bit about, who JFS is and who we work with in a couple slides. But so who are we talking about, right? New American families. And then why does tailored parenting support for these families matter? New American families are navigating a new culture while they're raising children, and that can just be really overwhelming. We'll talk a minute about some of just the stressors related to parenting. But there's just this extra stress of doing it in a new culture, which is already overwhelming, even for anybody who's maybe even traveled abroad. It's hard to sort of be in a new culture and figure out all of this stuff, and then to be the one guiding your children through that can be particularly overwhelming. So making sure that we have services that are particularly tailored to those families is really important. One of the things that makes it so hard is that norms are just really different here. Expectations of families, of kids, of parents are really different. The systems work really differently here. And they're different kind of from all the countries, right? We have as a refugee resettlement agency, JFS, we serve folks from dozens of different countries, and the norms across all of those countries are just so different. So again, helping make sure that we have services that, regardless of where a parent is from, they know that they can come, feel welcome, trust our information, is central to what we do. And then we'll talk, a lot today just about the age of misinformation that we're in right now. So the misinformation or lack of information for some people at the same time, both of those, kind of both can be true at the same time. But when you have misinformation or a lack of information, that can be, dangerous and lead to some challenges in health, challenges in safety, and make it all the more difficult for these families to integrate. So again, just making sure that we have supports tailored to these families is central to what we do. So then what is our role as parenting educators? Knowing that we are here to serve these families who have some of these distinct challenges. Our role is really kind of this dance and finding this balance between respecting the cultural values of the folks that we're serving with sharing accurate and accessible and evidence-based information, all with a goal of helping families to have information that they can trust, that's respectful of their culture, that's going to help them in their parenting, all with the goal of helping them make the decisions that are right for them. I think a lot of times parents can be nervous that we're going to try to get them to parent the American way. And of course, our goal is always to help each family achieve their own goals that align with their own values, and making sure that our services are serving that goal. So our role. So who are we? So my name is Jill Gavin. I was recently actually just kind of Wass and I are both brand new to some title changes. So I am now the Director of Community Enrichment at Jewish Family Services of Western New York, but like Michelle said, previously Associate Director of Refugee Programs. So I've been with the agency coming up on 6 years now. And I was leading our refugee resettlement program up until recently. And I was hired at the agency as the parenting coordinator over 5 years ago now to lead the parenting program that is largely focused on serving the refugee and immigrant community here in Western New York, helping parents navigate the challenges of raising children in a new country. Just a little other few things about me, some things that brought me to this work. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mozambique, which was sort of my initial exposure to life abroad. Prior to that, I had worked a little bit in the refugee community in Buffalo as an AmeriCorps program manager. So got some exposure to what it was like working with refugees in the Buffalo community. Then got to go abroad and kind of be that foreigner and be that new person and learn what life was like to be the one who needed help from the other people. Ended up staying over in Africa for quite a while. Came home, found this incredible job that just fit so perfectly. I have since gotten trained in the Incredible Years and Tuning into Teens parenting curricula. So I'm a facilitator of both of those. Our team next week will also be getting trained in the Nurturing Parenting curriculum. And this is just, I cry at every graduation ceremony because doing this work just feels like the biggest privilege on the planet to be able to support parents in what I consider to be the most important job on the planet. So that's a little bit about me. Wasa, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wasa Murphy. As Jill said, we've been having some changes lately in our titles. So I am the manager for community enrichment. Um, I've been with JFS for almost 4 years now. I started off with the PC team, which is Preferred Communities, working with clients who are highly vulnerable. And then I became the manager for the resettlement program in one of our sites. Working with clients helped me see that culturally, even though I might be coming from the same culture, I might understand that the things I know are not the same way how they see things. I worked as a medical doctor in Sudan in Africa. I was an OBGYN, and as a part of my residency, we were required to go to war zone to help women. And while we were in these areas, we learned that not everything we know and not everything we were taught as doctors is actually going to be implemented in that area. We learned that people struggle and suffer from things that are not the same things that we worry about. We learned from that community. And when I say we, it was a group experience, it was a great experience. We learned that something as simple as telling them, oh, no, put your babies have to sleep on their back. Your babies have to do this. Your babies have to do that. This is not one of their major worries. So, for us to be able to teach them little things that we know, we had to adjust our information to match the culture of the area that we were in, even though we were coming from the city. Same country, just the city. So, it was completely different for them. We learned a lot from them. We learned a lot of tricks. And when they say it takes a village, it
Mm.
really takes a village. In some places, the whole village would raise kids with you. So that was an amazing experience for me that I definitely learned from.
And I feel so blessed to have Wasa on the team now, as she just recently transitioned over from some other programming in the agency to be helping lead this programming with me. So just thrilled to have her on the team, and we'll introduce some more of our team in a bit. Okay, so what is the Family Support Program at JFS? Who are we? What do we do? Just a little bit of background so that everybody has a little context for sort of where some of this is coming from and why we were invited to offer you all this information. Since 2020, so we've been an OCFS contractor since 2014, offering the Incredible Years programming. I came in at 2020, so that's kind of where most of my staff tend to come from. But in that time, we've served over 350 parents from more than 25 countries, all really over the planet. Here's just a little, here's some of the countries that we've served folks from, just to show that we're working with folks from all over the planet. Like I said, Buffalo is one of Western New York's refugee resettlement agencies. So we're very used to welcoming newcomers into this country. And then also working with folks who've been here, 2, 5, 10 years. Our team tells us, doesn't matter how long they've been here, they still need our help and they still need this information, which is always, helpful to hear. So who are those folks that kind of need our help and need some of our information? 91% of the parents that we work with do speak a primary language that is not English. We do not exclusively serve new American families, but because there are resources out there in English, and for American-born families, we really focus our programming on filling that gap in the community and making sure that parents that are not from here, or that don't have the best grasp of English, they can access this information just as easily as folks who maybe are from here or have strong English skills. So almost 40% do speak some English, but again, that's over 60% that really don't speak English. So making sure that we are able to offer information to these parents who want it, and appreciate it, is central to what we do. 74% read and write in their primary language, but that's 1 in 4 who don't. So making sure that the information that we're offering is accessible to everyone, regardless of literacy levels, regardless of what language that literacy is in, is really important. And then, 40% with no high school degrees. Some of the folks we work with, it's mostly moms, as you see, 90% female, mostly moms. Dads are certainly welcome, but just because, a lot of the folks we work with are coming from cultures that kind of represent, maybe what some American traditions were like, maybe, 50, 75 years ago, when moms were really taking on a lot more of the brunt of that. Family life might not be the case for like a modern American sort of family born in the US today, but that's very much still the case for a lot of the families we work with. A lot of those folks, maybe only went to a couple years of school, didn't get the chance to graduate high school. So even just sort of that classroom setting is new to a lot of folks. They maybe stop school when they hit 10 or 12 because, they had to take care of younger kids in the family or be doing work for the family. And then 18%, almost 1 in 5 of the parents we work with are single parents. So they're running the household on their own amidst all of these other challenges of being a new American parent. So what do we do for these parents? Most of what we do is focused on group programming. So we've got a few different evidence-based curricula that we run, and then one that we're sort of piloting. So like I said, we've been running the Incredible Years since 2014. We also in 2022 or 2023 started using the Tuning into Teens curriculum out of Australia. If anybody is looking for programming for teenagers, we had parents just begging us, help me with my teenager. Doesn't matter where in the world you are from, if you have a teenager, it's tricky and you need help with it. So we had parents just begging us, help me with my teenager. So we started using this curriculum out of Australia, Tuning into Teens, which is really focused on emotion coaching. We really love it. We've run that curriculum in a few different languages already over the past few years. Parents really, really love it. It's really changing, relationships in households. And then our parents and teens together in a new country groups. These are something we started piloting last year. They are not an evidence-based program yet, I guess I would say. Toward the end, like I said, I'm going to be sharing a bunch of resources at the end of this, and I will talk about the handbook that we use to lead those groups. But those ones are really cool because it actually brings parents and their teenagers together to talk about a lot of the challenges of being a parent and being a teenager in a brand new country. So we've run that in a few different languages over the past few years. We didn't know how it was going to go getting teens into groups with their parents after school, but we talked to parents. We said, hey, how is this going to be possible? What do we need to do to get your teens to come to this with you? Because we know you want it. So those have been pretty successful over the past couple of years. We also run some women's empowerment programming. That's like kind of 3 to 4 to 6 month programming just on all different topics that help women just be a little more kind of independent and self-sufficient and understand, kind of their rights here as women. And then a little bit of our department, our agency offers far more extensive case management for all of these families that we serve. But within our programs that WASA and I oversee, we also offer bus training for families that just might not have confidence or know how to navigate the bus system here in the US. And then we also have a child care navigation program where we help families, particularly families who don't speak English. So again, just more challenges with navigating this very complicated system of applying for the New York State child care subsidy if they are have a job offer or they're looking to, study English or something else. So we help them apply for the New York State child care subsidy. We also help them identify child care providers, really trying to focus on child care providers that might be culturally responsive, linguistically responsive. There's only a couple child care providers in Western New York that speak Swahili, but if we can help connect that Swahili speaking child care provider with a parent who speaks Swahili so that they're not dropping their kid off with an English speaking provider, can't really connect with them at the end of the day. How'd it go? What went wrong? What happened? Tell me about the day. Making sure that folks are just able to kind of access care that's a little more tailored to what those families really need and deserve. And then also partnering with our local child care resource network to help families become legally exempt child care providers so that, like I said, there might only be one or two Swahili, speaking daycares in Western New York. But if we can help a Swahili speaking mom become a legally exempt childcare provider, and then she can start providing care for other Swahili speaking folks in her community, builds connection, reduces isolation, helps some, kind of maybe otherwise stay at home parents make some money. So sort of building that into all of what we do. Any questions?
So you have one question. How did you influence the teens to join the group with their parents? That's a tough one.
That's a question we said to the parents, because initially when we suggested it to parents, they were like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but our teens aren't going to come. And kind of even the initial reaction from some of my team was like, oh, they said their parents won't come. I'm like, no, but what do we need to do to get them to come? Like we can, let's brainstorm this. And we wrote it into the grant that we actually give gift cards every week for the teens. I think they're like Walmart or Amazon or something. But every week that the teens come, they get a $25 gift card. So you could call it kind of a bribe or a reward if you follow the Incredible Years philosophy of a bribe comes before the good activity and a reward comes after. Technically a reward, I suppose. So we get them in there with gift cards, but it works. They come, they're willing to come forward. And then by the end, right, of course they see the benefits. And parents said, we don't need the gift cards, but our teens are going to need it. And parents know their kids best, right? It worked.
Jill Alba's saying such a wonderful program, and Leslie's saying great idea.
And that's all the parents too. But yeah, it's been really cool. So I'll dive into a little bit more of that handbook toward the end. Okay. So what are some issues that impact, wasn't supposed to do that one yet. What are some of the issues just impacting parenting life in general, not specifically for new Americans, right? What are all families dealing with? It is, I've seen it written a couple of times now, the age of misinformation and advice overload. I know when I hop on my Instagram as someone who's currently 6 months pregnant with my first baby, I get showered with so much information and having to decipher through like, what is accurate? What is good advice? What is not? What's right for me? There's just so much out there for families to sift through. And then on top of that, it's just, we can count on more than both of our hands, all of the factors that make life really stressful for parents these days in these modern times. People are raising children in a world that looks very different than the world they grew up in a lot of ways. So, raising kids is tough, right? And then there's all of these sort of additional factors that just make being a new American family even more stressful. So there's concern for family abroad, particularly if somebody is here as a refugee, as an asylum seeker, as an asylee, kind of under one of those legal statuses that allowed them really to kind of come here because they had to, right? Like it really wasn't safe for them at home. There's a reason they, for refugees specifically, there's a reason they were kind of invited here as refugees. There's always that fear for just what's going on at home for the family who is there. I spoke a little bit earlier just about the acculturation challenges. I would say the thing I've heard since I started this job, maybe the most from parents in running my own groups, is parents will say, Jill, my kid's becoming American. He doesn't listen to me anymore. And just this sort of like understanding or misunderstanding that like this belief that like American parents don't discipline their kids. And, you know, from some people's perspective, that very much might be the case, but just sort of like adapting to the way of life here, which is just, you know, really different for most of the folks we work with. Like I said earlier, kind of just language and literacy challenges, you know, depending where your levels are. That power dynamics has been something, you know, really interesting that I've learned a lot about in this role, you know, because we know children's brains all the way up through like 24, 25, they're still developing. Children acclimate and acculturate much more quickly than their parents. A lot of times they're interpreting for their parents. They know what's going on. They develop that independence. They speed off into American life, or, you know, become bicultural, and parents are sort of left behind. Like they're not picking up the language as quickly. It's much harder to kind of adopt a new culture, you know, when you're not a growing, developing youth. And that really impacts the power dynamics in the home, that parents are just like a lot more reliable on their kids. And, you know, they sort of lose kind of that sense of power that we might typically assume is in a home, when the children are kind of the ones who know what's going on, and they're the ones building connections and understanding the system. So that can make it really tricky for parents to feel like they kind of have sort of that power that a parent might typically feel like, well, you know, I'm the parent, I'm the one kind of in control. I say in quotation marks, right? And then I just kind of put a couple stars, just even more recently, you know, I would say since the beginning of 2025, the folks we work with are very much living in a climate of fear. There's huge fear of family separation. Families are afraid to, you know, be away from their kids, afraid to send their kids to school, you know, and for good reason right now. It's a scary time, especially, you know, depending on where you are in the immigration process. You know, there were families that were set to reunify. Some folks have been here, and other family members were supposed to come and join them, and those have been canceled. You know, which, you know, there's maybe single parents, and the other parent was going to be coming over, and now they're not allowed to come over. You know, so all that's adds stress. And then, you know, for anybody that isn't sort of up to date on some of the more recent changes to legislation, any, you know, there's like I said, different legal statuses, but if someone does not have their legal permanent residency here, which you really can't get until you've been here like at least like around a year and a half, you're no longer eligible for SNAP. That's effective immediately. We haven't seen that go into effect at the state level yet. We are expecting those impacts to start hitting people in around January is kind of what we're hearing. But, you know, and again, it's by no fault of their own. They were eligible when they came here, and now they're not eligible to apply for the statuses they need yet. But now they're also not eligible for, you know, SNAP. And then beginning October of next year, they'll also no longer be eligible for Medicaid. So just some additional huge financial stressors that these communities are facing. Was there something in the chat, Wasa?
No, someone was agreeing with you.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'd just love to hear from folks. Where do we think parents are getting misinformation from? Again, feel free to come off mute if you don't want to listen to my voice this whole time. Or just drop it in the chat. Where do we think families are getting misinformation from?
You have other relatives, social media, copies. Yes, they're asking if someone is asking if they're going to get a copy of the recording.
Copy of the recording, I defer to
Michelle.
Michelle on. We can definitely get this presentation out though.
Michelle?
Yeah, we'll be able to send the copies of the recordings out.
Cool.
So back to our answers. We have other relatives, we have social media, we have a lot of people that are agreeing on social media, TikTok, social media, news, social media, peers, social media.
Cool. Yeah, totally. You guys know what's up, right? You're all in this world with us. Social media for sure. Like I said, I log on and there's so much information, and it's what do I trust? What do I not? And it's really hard to know, which is again what we're going to be talking about. Any parenting forums or groups, you know, Facebook, Facebook and WhatsApp are both big in the New American communities that we work in. And they're in these groups on, I log onto a Facebook group for, parents who want to do co-sleeping, and the information in there is just, really overwhelming, and you don't really know what to trust. Blogs, websites, anybody can start a website, anybody can write a blog, right? Anybody can put whatever information they want out there. Anybody can create a video, and everybody is creating videos. Outdated books and resources, a lot of the families, like we said, a lot of financial stressors out there. So even if, folks, maybe they are able to read English, but they get their hands on a book that maybe it was from, back in the 90s before we started talking about putting babies to sleep on their back or something like that. Those are still out there, certainly. And then, like somebody mentioned, family, cultural traditions. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So, moral of the story, the misinformation is just everywhere, right? I'd be curious if anybody wanted to share any examples of misinformation that they've seen, heard, been given, maybe just like sort of, or that you're maybe even more so that New American families have brought to you. I'd just be curious of any of those examples there.
Jill, Leslie did have a good point that
Yeah.
it's well-meaning, the intent is good, but it's misinformation. It could be from friends and neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends and family, they want to help us, and that, well, this is what worked for me, right? And I'll start with an example. I remember seeing just like on an Instagram post, I think, of a mom that was saying, hey, if your kid has a really bad cold, you can take a candle and put some Vicks Vapo Rub around the outside of the candle and like leave it in the baby's room while they sleep. And at first glance, it's like, oh, what a good idea. And then you see all these comments that are like super dangerous. Like, you don't want to do that. Like, this is a huge, like, safety risk to your baby, right? But, it was a good intention from somebody out there just saying this is what worked for us. And, right, does that mean it's what we all can and should be doing, right?
Jill, also Shannon is talking about TikTok and how people would pretty much sell anything through supplements, just to cure children's speech delays and other things. But you're absolutely right. Some of them might use it just to promote a product they have, and some people might just use the piece of information in that ad or through a TikTok video as if it is the information, the true information or the correct information, without realizing that someone is actually selling a supplement.
Yeah, again, that stuff happens to me even. And again, I'm a native English speaker, American born in this country. Like I should be kind of the most prepared to be able to wade through this pool of information. And if it's, and I study this stuff and this is my work. And if it's difficult for me to decipher through, like, I don't know, is this a good piece of advice or not? Right. We can just imagine what like the families that we're working with are dealing with.
Jill, Connor also shared vaccines cause autism. That is a classic example of misinformation.
Yeah, and there's so much scary stuff out there that parents, it adds to that stress of like, wait a minute, I just learned this information now. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I kind of decipher through that? Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. Thanks, Connor. Okay, so what are some of these barriers to reliable information? We talked about language and literacy. A lot of times things aren't translated, even if the accurate information is out there in English. There's not always translations. And then even if there are, like we said, I think it was one in four parents we work with aren't literate even in their own language. So even if the stuff is translated, which a lot of times that really like evidence-based stuff, that's where it is. It's written out, and it's written in English. The families we work with don't really have access to that. Again, that trust in the family, in the people that we know, right? We know that it's all well intended. And particularly for folks who've been through, maybe that refugee process or come here as asylum seekers, they've been through a lot of government systems. Those systems don't, always end up treating people the best. And so there's a hesitancy toward trusting, some of our bigger systems and institutions. So of course, people are going to go toward the people they know, and what they're telling them. And then just these cultural differences in the values, right? It's really easy, I think, for families to feel like, well, I don't want like what you want. Like, I don't want to live in a household where my child doesn't respect me, is, again, sort of how a lot of the families we work with feel. They're like, so why do I want information from you if the values that you're living don't necessarily align with the values that I'm living? And then just access, right? Whether it's access to internet, transportation, or time constraints. Like I said, we've got a lot of single parents that we particularly work with, or just a lot of families that maybe they were a doctor. A lot of times we see this, right? They were a doctor in their home country. They were a professor. They were an engineer, but their English isn't perfect. And so they're washing dishes somewhere. You know what I mean? And so we've got two maybe very highly educated parents in the household, and yet they're new to the US. They're still getting a grasp of English, and they're working minimum wage jobs, which means they're not home together a lot, and just a lot more time constraints on them. So we're going to go into strategies in a second, but just some principles for promoting reliable parenting information. You see at the top here, cultural humility. One of the other phrases I hear sometimes is cultural competence. And we know we will never be fully competent in any of the cultures, that we work with. But we can always be humble. We can always honor and respect the traditions that folks are bringing here, recognize that those traditions have huge value and honestly can teach us a lot. I learned so much from the families we work with. But so we want to, like I said before, balance honoring and respecting cultural traditions while also offering, an introduction to US norms that is also going to help parents acculturate, because as much as they say like, well, this is how we did it back home, they want help in figuring out, okay, but our kids are now growing up in America. Their children have a very different expectation. They're not just going to get on board with what happened back home, in the village kind of thing. So parents really do need that help of like, okay, but my kid's growing up in a totally different culture than I did. So how do I respond to that? Of course, accessibility wise, we want everything in as many formats as possible. We at JFS offer, we prefer to offer in-person programs, but we do a lot virtually just because that's, what parents are kind of willing and able to show up for. But just making sure that, we've got stuff that folks can listen to, that they can look at, that, honoring all of those different adult learning principles. Of course, using evidence-based information as much as we can. I'm going to pop up over to plain language. This is also just a reminder, even for folks that do maybe have a decent grasp on English, colloquialisms still are new and are tough. I was in a meeting the other day with a Ukrainian colleague of mine, and somebody said something in the meeting. I don't remember what it was, but somebody said something in the meeting, and I turned to her and I was like, have you ever heard that phrase? Like, do you know what it means? And she's like, no, like, I have no idea what that just meant. She wasn't going to say that, right? She wasn't going to say, wait, what did that mean? I don't know. But just recognizing that like these phrases that come so second nature to us aren't the case for folks who aren't native English speakers. So just making sure that we're using really clear, simple, concise language as much as possible. And then this last point, which to me is the most fundamental, and it's what we're going to be talking about next, is just having that community-based trust. So partnering with folks from the communities that we're working with to help build that trust so that the folks that we're working with just feel more comfortable working with us, really. So
Jill?
this leads us, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, we have a question. How do I gain access to tuning into teen and like teen programming?
What was the second one and what?
Teen like other teen
Oh,
programming.
so tuning into teens, I think you would Google tuning into kids is actually it's out of the University of Melbourne. But I think if you Google tuning into, I think it's tuning into kids like .au or something like that. We found it actually through, I think it was through an RFP through OCFS, maybe back when that Family Opportunity Center grant came out, and it was like you're required to use, kind of any of these evidence-based curriculum. We started researching them. And we saw tuning into teens. Parents had been begging us for programming of teens. So you should just be able to hop onto their website. I and my team all did the training virtually online. It's like a nighttime training, right? Because they're in Australia. So it's from like, I don't know, 6 to 10 p.m. for like 3 days. So they have tuning into teens, tuning into kids, tuning into toddlers, all about emotion coaching, helping parents like identify emotions in their kids, right? We all know that like our behavior stems from our emotions, right? Our behavior is a form of communicating our emotions. So it's all about helping parents and families build language around emotions, like identify when an emotion is happening, recognize it, label it, hold space for it, honor it, validate, all that good stuff. And then potentially problem solving with the teen, but mostly just like, oh, there's a feeling happening here. Let's just like hold some space for that and name that and recognize that and let you know that it's okay. It's a really cool curriculum because it leads you through. I almost did one of the exercises here in this session, but I didn't think we'd have time. Of like, how did your parents respond when you were sad when you were little, right? And here, or how did your family respond to happiness when you were little? And we learned some really cool things. Again, one of our Ukrainian colleagues, she's like, oh, smiling isn't like a thing we do, kind of, you know what I mean? Like happiness isn't celebrated where we're from, right? Or, you know, sadness. I wasn't other folks from other cultures, right? Like I wasn't allowed to be sad, and how that develops our own meta emotion, you know, our own feelings around emotions, and how that then creates who kind of we become as parents. And typically it's, you know, either the way we were parented or we choose the complete opposite way of what we were parented. But little intro on tuning into teens, but that's, yeah, I would just Google tuning into kids. Any other
Jill,
questions?
yeah, Logan also had a comment on plain language. He said jokes and sarcasm, especially irony, can be particularly difficult for non-English speakers as well. And yes, I speak English, but English is not my first language, maybe my fourth language. So yes, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Tone sarcasm is, yeah. I remember in Peace Corps, I think we had a room full of Americans and Mozambicans, and one of the questions was like, raise your hand if you use sarcasm. And like all the Americans raised their hand and none of the Mozambicans raised their hand. And it was, yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so strategy, partner with trusted messengers. I would say if you take like one thing away from today's session, for us, this is the foundation of kind of our success, why parents keep coming back to work with us. They'll go through incredible years. They'll go through tuning into teens. They'll go through women's empowerment, and they'll say, what else do you have? Like, what else can I do? And it is because of the women that you see on this screen, a few other women who also aren't on this screen. They are the foundation of our team. So we refer to them as community liaisons. That's actually a name that they chose themselves. We talked a lot about what we would want, what they'd want to be called. All four of the women that you see recently got their, through NYSPEP, they got their parenting educator credential. It was a really long process for them all to go through, but we are so thrilled to be able to say that they're all credentialed parenting educators. So like you see, we've got somebody from Dominican, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Ukraine, and then a couple other women, you know, who kind of come in and out. But working with folks from the community just immediately builds that level of trust, right? You see Salima on the screen. If a mom from Afghanistan comes to me and says, hey, Jill, this doesn't work for me. This strategy that you're teaching about doesn't work for me because back in Afghanistan, this is how it is. I can try to respond to that, right? But Salima, who is a mom from Afghanistan raising her daughter here in the US, can say, kind of, you know, I know exactly what you're talking about. This is how it is in our culture. These are ways that we can still honor our cultural values from back home. And these are the ways I've adapted to it here in the US, or these are the ways I've seen other parents from our community here in the US adapt to it. It's a totally different level of trust that is just immediately built with parents. It also allows us to offer programming directly in their languages. So Salima is trained in these languages. Now, when I initially trained her, I led the group in English and she interpreted into Dari. But now she's trained and she runs the groups directly in Dari, which, you know, the parents give us the feedback like, yeah, it's better to be able to communicate directly. You also get through twice as much material in a session when it's all facilitated directly in that language instead of having to stop for that interpretation. Now, it took us time to get here. Again, we had to build. We did a lot of programming in English for these women to get trained up, but now they're trained. They can offer programming directly in their languages. Each of them runs a WhatsApp group. Salima's group actually has over 100 Afghan women in it, all who live in Western New York, who are all connected to one another. and really creates that community. Our Spanish WhatsApp group has, I think, over 75 people in it. So they're just able to, that direct communication and recognition of, even if you're not from the same country I am, there's some lived experience here, some shared lived experience that just helps parents feel more comfortable working with them. And here is just a quick little 90-second video of our team.
My name is Nana Lawi. I am a Burmese community liaison with Jewish Family Service, Western New York.
My name is Salima Panasada.
My name is Khadija. My name is Shamim.
My name is Oksana.
My name is Nada.
I work with refugee from community Rohingya,
Burmese community,
Arab refugees,
Swahili,
Afghan.
The Ukrainian community.
The biggest challenges that my community faces are transportation,
Housing.
language barrier,
Looking for jobs.
they don't know how to access childcare system.
communication with their kids, school.
the culture, the language, everything is different from our own country.
For Afghans, everything is challenging.
I'm a part of an incredible team.
Help people in our languages.
We support the families in different ways.
And so that those families who are new can be well adjusted in the United States.
Parents always have so many questions.
The parenting program is really helping the parents how to raise their kids medically.
We support them emotionally by offering support groups.
Women's empowerment program as well as home visits for newcomers.
And it makes a huge difference.
It contributes to their happiness, their connection, their success, and also self-sufficiency.
JFAS has provided me with so many opportunities, such as becoming a leader in my own community. I learned a lot, and the program opened my eyes.
I'm very proud of myself.
I love this job because I can help my people.
My work has a huge impact on the community that I serve.
I know many people who still need help.
I appreciate your help.
Дякую.
Shukran.
Tashakkur.
Asante sana. Shukriya. Thank you.
I love that sound of her daughter at the end of it. Those are the women who do our incredible work. I'm so grateful for them every day. They're the women who really make the difference out there.
Jill, you have a question from Leslie.
Yeah.
She said, wow, so important and impressive. How do you attract all these wonderful leaders?
So when I started again in 2020, I kind of, having lived abroad enough, and done kind of international development work, I knew I'm a white American girl. I was hired to lead parenting education in the refugee community here. I just knew I'm not the best placed person to be the actual one facilitating these groups. Yes, I can know this information well. And yes, the groups go great. Like when I run them, they go fine. But I just knew this work is meant to be done by people from these different communities. There's just a different level of value that's just not possible for me to offer. So I started offering interpreter trainings in the community. It worked out well because it was able to still count toward our grant numbers because everybody was a participant. So the way that we run our training for this team is everybody participates as a parent themselves. So everybody you see on this screen, they have participated in an Incredible Years group, the full 14-week series. As a mother, they have practiced these strategies, they've adopted these strategies, and they're living and breathing, not just talking the talk, but they're walking the walk of all of these strategies that we teach in our programming. So they do a full series as a parent themselves. Then they interpret for a series. So for example, I led a group in English, and Rahwa, who you see, interpreted it into Tigrinya. I led a group in English, and then Salima interpreted it into Dari, so that they have the perspective of knowing the curriculum from a parent themselves, so they can really relate to the parents that they're working with. Now they're getting to see this curriculum kind of through the lens of an interpreter and being on that other side of it. Then we pay to get them trained by the curricula, designer. So they're trained by the Incredible Years, trained by Tuning Into Teens, and then they're ready to go off and run the programming themselves. Now, of the women you see on the screen here, Salima and Oksana are both staff members, either full or part-time. They're employed as family support specialists, but then in pretty much all of our grants, again, because we work in this community, we write a language services line into pretty much all of our contracts, all of our grants. There's always money we call it language services to keep it flexible, but it's basically for written translation or spoken interpretation. So that gives us the flexibility then that, sometimes I might be running programming and I might need to call Cipriana and have her interpret for me, but it also gives us that funding to just pay Cipriana to be able to do some of this work. And we're really, upfront about that with our donors and everybody of like, sometimes they're just interpreting, but sometimes they're actually doing the work themselves, and which is honestly more valuable. 1050. Okay. So, all right. Some more, just second strategy is to just translate and adapt all of the materials. So these are just some examples on the bottom of some of the different flyers that we've used for our group programs. Of course, we do want, even though not everybody is literate in their own language, we do still, want the information out there for the families who are. We also want to make sure they're culturally relevant and correct. We've sent things over to translators, translation agencies before, and we get it back. And we have somebody from our team read it, and they're like, yeah, no, this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change. So making sure that if you do get things translated, you do have people review them is really important. Of course, using imagery that reflects the community. If I'm doing a flyer for a Swahili group and it's, all white people on the flyer, like obviously, of course, that's not what we want. If we can facilitate the programming directly in families' languages, that's what families have told us they prefer. Now we have, typically when we run our groups, we like to run them all one language. So we will run an Arabic group, a Dari group, a Tigrinya group, a Spanish group. We have in the past done multiple languages in one setting. So one time I was running a group and we had 3 different language groups, each sitting with their community liaison. You get through a third of the material. It's better than nothing, certainly. And if you don't have like 10 Arabic speakers, if you're like, we have 1 Arabic speaker and 2 Swahili and 3 Burmese, it's certainly doable. But the parents, again, we asked parents for feedback and they were like, yeah, we prefer everybody to kind of speak our language. One of the other huge benefits of doing like group programming in these languages is it really reduces isolation and helps, to kind of bring back, kind of that village life, and just parents just make friends. They come here and they lose so much of that community. Parenting in the US is incredibly isolating, right? We know this, especially for these communities that don't necessarily have family here with them. So creating a space where like 10, 14, maybe Arabic speaking moms can all come together every week, they really build friendships that way. So when we can do language specific groups, that's what we prefer. But it is possible to facilitate in English with different kind of language kind of pods sitting across the room. And then we always want to hire professional interpreters. We definitely recommend building it into your budgets. Like I said before, asking children to interpret for their parents just kind of promotes that imbalance of power in the household, which just makes it tougher for parents to kind of implement any of their parenting strategies that they might want.
Joe, we have a question. What is your referral process?
So when we get a referral, this is something that we've kind of played around with through the years. We have just a referral form. The way that we're doing it currently is we have like kind of what we call our service integration team. Anybody who is referred to us, if there are children in the home, our first stop is usually a home visit with that family. Now, up until January, February, when refugee resettlement was kind of suspended, we would do a home visit every family that JFS resettled, and we were resettling like up to like 700 people a year in most recent years. We'd put them all on a list. Our team, whoever on that language spoke that team, we'd go, they'd do a home visit with that family. They'd do kind of like an intro to parenting in the US. I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Introduce themselves, invite them to join the WhatsApp groups, tell them about what we do. And so although we don't really have newcomers arriving to the country much anymore, that's still our first step. Is when we get a referral, we reach out to the family, ask if they're interested, and we go and do a home visit with them. And we meet that family, we hear what's going well, take that strength-based approach, and then talk about the programming that we offer and see if they might want to, sign up if we're doing enrollments, or at least get on the wait list for any future programs.
Jill, I think one person is having issue with their screen. I just want to make sure anybody else is having an issue viewing Jill's screen.
Okay.
I think it is only one person, so I'm gonna work with them on the chat on trying to fix that.
Yeah.
Jill, Carrie has another question. The family I work with are refugees. Are they eligible?
It depends how long they've been here. Are they eligible for our programs? Is that the question? Anyone is eligible for our programs. If you're in Western New York, anybody's absolutely eligible. I think my email is on the very last slide. You can definitely email, but yes, because we have this, beautiful OCFS funding, technically anybody's eligible for our programming, even if they're not a refugee. If they could be born in the US, and some American-born families do actually want to join our program because they want some exposure to kind of other cultures. But if that was the question, unless it was eligible for like benefits.
Carrie's gonna email you.
Yeah, yeah, please do. So strategy 3, meet families where they are, offering sessions online or in familiar spaces. Spaces that used to feel safer to families don't feel quite as safe at the moment. Again, we do end up doing a lot on Zoom just because, we try to run all of our programming as much as we can during the school day when, older kids are at school. If we do run in-person programming, we always provide volunteers in a playroom. We always run programming in a space that has a separate playroom, give parents a break. We have volunteer parent leaders, folks who've already completed our parenting groups. They're volunteering in the playroom so that parents get that break, and they can really concentrate on the material. But we've also, partnered with churches. We'd love to partner with a mosque to run programming in spaces that parents are really comfortable going. Disseminate everything through channels that families already use. Like I said, WhatsApp and Facebook are really big. Every parent group that we run, we have a specific WhatsApp group for that group. So we'll have, Arabic Fall 2025 Incredible Years group. And all the women in that group, we can send quick updates. Oh, group has to be canceled, or we're going to start 30 minutes late, or women can ask questions. How's everybody's home activities coming? Share some pictures and videos of your kids. So using those channels that families already use. WhatsApp is, most people are on the planet at this point. Outside of the US, WhatsApp is really popular. And, using short videos or voice messages. One of the WhatsApp groups that we have is in Rohingya, which is actually not a written language. So all of the messages that go back and forth in that WhatsApp group, they're all spoken. So there's just a lot of voice notes. I don't have a clue what any of them say, right? Because it's our Burmese and Rohingya community liaison who leads that group. But they're just doing everything by voice message because that's what that community needs. It's not, their spoken language is not written. And then, making sure we're addressing barriers just as we would with any other program. So providing bus passes when we can. We also offer bus training to folks so that, a lot of moms just say, I don't know how to take the bus. And we try to, we'll do like 3 different sessions with them, teaching them how to get to different places with the goal of helping them learn how to use the bus to get anywhere. Now, even when we do that, everybody's pretty spread out around Buffalo, particularly. So even if you know how to use the bus, even if we try to put something in a centralized location, it still might be an hour for you. It might be 2 bus rides for you. If you got 3 kids, it's February in Buffalo. We get it. You're not leaving the house for that. So then we do a lot on Zoom as well. Always making sure that there's like I said, a playroom that parents can bring their kiddos. But then we do also run some programming on like Friday and Saturday nights. Our Spanish groups, parents are working during the day, and our community liaisons like, cool, I'll do it on a Friday night. I don't mind. We're like, awesome. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. So really just accommodating the schedules and the needs of families.
Jill Leslie has 2 questions. One of them was, are we currently only serving Western New York? I answered her yes in the chat, but she also has a question. Do you also address safety concerns parents may have, perhaps DV?
We do, but we typically partner with expert partners in the field. So if you're in Western New York, we have an MOU actually with Rahama. For anybody who's familiar with Rahama, they're like a Muslim-based domestic violence agency. They don't only serve Muslim families and women, but it's, kind of run by the Muslim community. So really responsive, particularly to that community. They've got Bengali speakers on staff, Arabic speakers on staff. So when that comes up, we typically connect directly. You know, we also work with Family Justice Center, but we really look to our trusted partners when significant concerns like that come up.
So we also have sessions for women empowerment, which is before DV happens, where we talk about women's rights and more like a preventative program rather than a solution.
Mm-hmm. And I think just building these safe spaces, you know, it might not be even in the first parent group, but maybe by the second parent group, when you've worked with this community liaison now for maybe 6 months, you might feel a little more comfortable saying something, or the community liaison is, you know, trained to kind of tune in and look for these risk factors and might be able to broach a conversation with a woman a little more easily than me, even if I've been working with her for a year, right? Because so much of it's cultural. We're just able to be a lot more responsive because of the team doing the work. All right, strategy 4, offer interactive learning opportunities. Like we said, everybody learns differently. So making sure that we're building in all different types of just like interactive activities really helps parents build their confidence. So we do, you know, we like to do little workshops. The peer groups to me is kind of the, you know, again, the most important parent groups. You might do a 14-week evidence-based parenting group, and your parenting strategies are definitely going to change. You know, the feedback we hear from parents is great. But the biggest impact on you might be that like you made a friend, or you made multiple friends, or you now feel like you just have this other community here where before you just felt really isolated, which, you know, we know, you know, children's well-being is highly dependent on mom's well-being. And if mom's feeling isolated or depressed or any of that, you know, that's going to impact everything in the home. So making sure we do want to move into doing some one-on-one programming. That's one of the reasons our whole team is getting trained in the nurturing parenting curriculum next week, so that we can do more of that individual one-on-one for folks who really need it. But we just love the group programming because it creates that opportunity for peer connections. Doing role plays in groups, anybody who's running, you know, any curriculum that has role playing as part of it knows that it's, you know, parents, people might say they kind of understand the concept, but then you actually get them on the ground. Somebody's the parent, somebody's pretending to be the child, and actually acting these strategies out helps them learn in a totally different way, gives you as the facilitator insight into like, do they actually understand what I'm saying? Also always great for parents to practice being the child, because then they get to experience what it's like to be a child on the receiving end of whether it's like a positive parenting practice or maybe like something we don't want to do. We don't really practice too much of like what we don't want to do, but really helpful for parents to get to experience, you know, like that one-on-one attention from a parent, or some of that like social coaching or emotion coaching, the different skills we teach to like feel how good that feels to be getting that attention from a parent, makes them more likely to kind of use those strategies with their kids. You know, always like offering home activities. We typically, you know, the curricula typically come with their own like home assignments, but again, it's always, all right, what are you taking from today? What's the goal you're going to set for yourself before next week? Like, which of all the things we talked about today, what do you want to practice? What do you want to practice? Letting parents like choose for themselves what they're going to focus on that week. And then those WhatsApp groups are really fun because parents can like share videos, share pictures, share stories, ask questions in between groups. Group sharing is a huge part of it too. You know, a lot of times parents might ask a question and my response is, what does anybody else in the group think? Does anybody else have experience with this? And learning, that's, I would say, the feedback that I've probably seen the most from parents is that I loved learning from other parents in the group. So there's the evidence-based strategies that we are offering, but then there's what they're learning from the other families. And that's when we talk about like promoting reliable parenting information, we want folks coming to, if we're available, we want folks coming to us for this information. We want them to know how to navigate through the sea of information that's out there. But if we're here to be doing this work, we want them coming back to their parenting group and saying, hey, ladies, or hey, teacher, you know, they call us teacher a lot, like, this thing happened. What do you recommend? We want to be that space for them that they can come and ask those questions and be doing it in kind of group settings. So everybody might be benefiting from those answers. And then fun family activities. You know, we got to take folks on a trip up to Niagara Falls. A lot of what we do is only with the parents. So we love when we can bring in an activity that the kids actually get to come, parents get to meet each other's kids, if anybody's in Buffalo and familiar with Stitch Buffalo, we've brought families over to Stitch to do just some cool kind of sewing activities. And then the last strategy that I'm going to share is resource navigation. So our team doesn't actually do a ton of this. The only time we really do it on our team is if somebody isn't eligible for kind of case management services elsewhere in our agency. We are fortunate to come from, JFS is a relatively sized agency. We've got somewhere around 100 staff, I think. So, lots of different programs. We've got a mental health clinic, we've got a health homes program, and we've got a lot of case management programming. So always making sure that those basic needs of families are met so that they're not living on cortisol and not in a space to be learning and all of that. So some examples of things that our clients typically need help with, or that your clients might need help with: scheduling appointments, finding doctors, connection to legal providers is huge right now, depending on what somebody's legal status is. Like I said, just making sure that folks are taking those steps to get legal permanent residency so that they don't lose their SNAP benefits if they have been, if they've only been in the country for maybe a year or so, or for whatever reason just haven't filed like for that green card. Making sure that everybody is moving forward to do that so that they maintain eligibility for government benefits. Connecting people to food and diaper pantries, those DSS applications. A lot of folks were real anxious about getting their real IDs when that all went into effect a couple months ago, especially if they're going to be going into government buildings, or just having that. Even if you're here legally right now, like it's just which most folks are, it's a scary time. So making sure that folks have like a valid proof of legal status kind of on them at all times. Bus training, connecting people to jobs, that childcare navigation, helping people get into ESL classes. So navigating all that. Any questions before I jump into kind of this next part? Okay, so just a quick little conversation I wanted us to have. This is something that would be very likely that we might hear from somebody. The only way to get a child to behave is through physical punishment, right? Super common for a lot of the folks we work with, a lot of the cultures we work with. Curious if anybody has any ideas, suggestions in the chat of how you might respond, or questions that might come up. And then on the next slide, we'll kind of talk about some options of how you can handle this. And you're welcome to come off mute too, if you prefer. Parents might say, oh, go ahead.
One of the responses I got, Debbie, tell me more about why you believe this.
Love that. Cool. That's great.
I love it too.
Yeah. Tell me more is like a magical phrase, right? Tell me more. Tell us more. Opening up that space for learning. So often our job as the kind of teacher is to become the student and learn, and giving parents that space to recognize, we know that you have value to offer here too. It's fundamental in all of our parenting programs, not just with new Americans, but particularly for folks who are often looked at as well, we're the ones who know, you're new here, so let us teach you, right? Letting them know you can be the teacher too.
We have a couple of other responses.
Cool.
We have, is that what was done when you were a child? Tell me more about your experience as a child. What other strategies have you used? Ask what other folks in the group think and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know other ways, which usually if it's group of people from the same culture, that would definitely make sense. How does this feel to you or to your child?
Yeah. This is when it is so nice to have a group of women all from the same country, because a lot of times we might get somebody who's no, that's there might be two moms from the Congo in the group, and one mom saying, well, this is how we do it in Congo, but sometimes there's another mom from that same country who's no, actually, and then somebody said, you can kind of let the discourse unfold a little bit and just kind of see what happens. Okay, so yeah, just some things that we might want to that we can think about when something like this comes up in a group. somebody in the group shares a piece of misinformation that you're like, ooh, I don't want to like dive into correcting you and focus on like what's wrong here. How can we maybe focus on what's right, or like use this as an opportunity? So to me, again, this is where I go to like, who is leading the conversation? This conversation might look very different if, you know, this is said to a facilitator, potentially from the same country or same cultural background, or at least in that same language. If it's being translated, it's breaking it up, you know, I should say interpreted. You know, there's certainly very much still value in that. And we do that as well. But this is where you look to like, who's leading the conversation is really probably going to change what this conversation looks like. Of course, we always, you know, in all the work we do, we all always want to be strengths-based, trauma-informed, recognizing that, you know, if folks did come here not fully out of choice of their own, right? Like they left where they were because it wasn't safe for them where they were. There's usually a pretty severe history of trauma here. You know, usually physical trauma is part of that. So just recognizing that like somebody said, like, this is probably what they know, and this is probably what they experienced as a child. So bringing in kind of some of that active listening, like folks said, like that tell me more, opening up space for it. If anybody's not familiar with the benefits and barriers exercise, the Incredible Years curriculum itself actually like guides us through kind of, they do like a whole benefits and barriers exercise around physical discipline. And it starts with like, what are the benefits to physical discipline? Let's like talk about like why this is a strategy so many people go to. Like, it works in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? Like if your goal is to raise a child that does what you say, you know, if that's the parent's goal, you know, you kind of talk about what some of the benefits are and then move into like, and what might be some reasons this might not be the best kind of solution, and help parents come up with all of those reasons of like, yeah, this is why we do it. Yeah, this actually, if my goal is actually, you know, XYZ, I can maybe see how this actually strategy might be getting in the way of me achieving my goal. So love the benefits and barriers exercise. If you want to kind of bring in some of that evidence, you can, you know, bring in like, let's explore what's recommended here as part of that conversation. And then I love what folks said of like, yeah, let's hear from other people, like, especially if it's something that, you know, the folks do say like, well, in our country, it's like, well, that your experience in your country, but then you can hear from other folks with experiences in that country, or that's where the facilitators who are like, yeah, that was totally my reality back home too. But then I've lived here, and I'm, you know, we're raising our kids here, or I've met all these different people in the community who are raising their kids here. And this is how we honor our own culture. And this is also how we can kind of adopt practices from here as well that might be feel a little better than they did when we were kids, things like that. And then even talking, if you do have kind of that group of folks from all different countries, that's when conversation gets really interesting of like, tell us about this in your country. How does your country see this? How does your culture view this? Like, what is common, you know, and really just kind of learning that like, there's so many different ways to parent. Okay, I'm going to actually just gonna skip a couple slides. I want to make sure we leave a little more time for questions at the end. We've got about 15 minutes left, but so how can parents spot information? One of the things we do is even with our like refugee resettlement clients of like helping them recognize logos, even if it's like on a piece of mail, right? If somebody's waiting for a really important letter from DSS, we're going to make sure they know what that DSS logo looks like, right? Because there's so much, I mean, most of the mail I get in my mailbox goes right into the recycling bin, right? But then there's that one little really important piece. So helping people identify logos and just kind of know who those reputable organizations are can be really helpful. So we've got AAP here, CDC, WHO, and then I also added La Leche League. Also just helping people understand that like, right, if it's the miracle, a lot of what we see on the internet, right, those miracle cures, or it's, you know, really fear-based, like you need to do this because otherwise, you know, your child is bound for this, something like this, a really black and white advice, right? If there's not room for that gray sort of like make it your own, it's probably not something you just don't want to trust on its face. And then, like we said, the internet, anybody can be, you know, an author on the internet. So helping people, you know, really just ask themselves, like, who is this coming from? Like, why do I trust this person? Kind of asking asking themselves those questions. Okay, I'm going to move into some resources. Again, we'll share this out. Anything underlined here is a clickable link, but I just wanted to share just some resources for folks, just so people kind of know some of like a little bit of what's out there. So La Leche League International has some cool translated stuff. So you can see these ones on skin to skin contact, increasing milk supply. They have material translated into some different languages. So, you know, if a family comes to you and, you know, they speak Arabic and have some specific questions, La Leche League, you know, particularly for breastfeeding, of course, is somewhere you can maybe go for potentially some translated resources on that. Global Health Media, also, like we said, we want multiple formats. They have videos. So each of these topics here, you see caring for your small baby. That's in Kinyarwanda, which is awesome, right? They've got that video in lots of different languages. Breastfeeding your small baby, the video, we've got Somali, loads of other languages. These I all took from kind of like the caring for small babies section, but there's lots of different sections on their website of, you know, we see the languages Bangla, Urdu. Again, videos are often like when people can listen to the information, that's, you know, culturally most of, you know, information stories has been passed down verbally through generations for most of these cultures. So when they can hear things verbally, that's a great approach for folks. So those are two good resources. The Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, I really like that this one had bed sharing information in different languages. Like Wasa mentioned earlier, the folks that we work with, they're sleeping in bed with their babies. That's what they've done. That's what they've always done, you know, and they come here and they're just told like, you can't do that. And it's like, that's pretty black and white, right? Like it's like, how about if you are going to do it, how about let's find a way to like make sure that you're going to do it safely. So making sure that, you know, we're not just assuming parents are going to adopt these practices and honoring like, where are you from? What's your culture? What do you know? What do you know that works? Let's give you some evidence to help make sure that what you're doing is as safe as possible. So Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine has some bed sharing guides that don't make parents feel like a terrible parent if they're bed sharing, which most parents end up doing at some point anyway, and end up doing it not safely because the information isn't out there for them. The Raising Children Network also has just all different. Raising Children Network is an Australian connection. So the languages are, you know, sometimes a little different, but they had a lot that were still really relevant for the cultures we work with. So again, just more resources there. And again, these links you can click right on. This was a really cool project that we actually did in partnership with Buffalo Toronto Public Media. So they're kind of like the local PBS outfit here in Buffalo. And we did a school readiness series with them a couple summers ago, and we worked with them together to get all these materials translated into these different languages. So like there's Elmo in Swahili, which I think is just like the coolest thing, right? There's like Sesame Street characters in Arabic and Dari. So these are more like school readiness resources for parents who were like, I don't know what my kid needs to know to start kindergarten here. So we did kind of a 4-day session, but then worked with them to give them kind of worksheets and handouts that they could be using with their kiddos. I could email these to folks. They're all available online as well, right at these links. So for anybody who has the presentation after you click the link, it'll bring you to the website where you can download any of these resources.
Jill, I did share the links as well in the chat.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Settle In. So this is another one. This one is more like resettlement focused. This is an app or a website that we would recommend to families kind of when they're new to their country. It's got a lot about like actual US refugee resettlement that could be helpful for like service providers and also families. But then there's also some specific stuff. So you can go to the website and you can look at cultural adjustment is typically where like parenting, family life, that kind of stuff comes in. But so you could help guide folks in this website. So you can see all the different languages over here that the resources come in. Just again, like acculturation to this country is such a stressor for families. So any information that we can offer parents to help them not feel so in the dark of just like, what is this country that my child is growing up in? And how do I kind of understand this system and this world a little bit better can just help reduce stress on parents. And then this is Over here, so BRICS is Bridging Refugee Youth and Children's Services. We love their resources. Over here, I said we do home visits, particularly when a family is brand new to the country. We don't necessarily always use this guide if they've been here a while, but so this guide on the left over here, it comes in lots of different languages. It's called Raising Children in a New Country, and it's sort of like Raising Kids in America 101. It's like a little primer. It talks about like supervision expectations of like how to like avoid getting CPS called on you, right? Because where you're from, maybe it was fine to like go to the market and leave your 8-year-old home alone. But here in America, if you do that, your next door neighbor might call CPS on you. And we want to avoid parents from like getting involved in that system unnecessarily. So safety things like car seats and seat belts and expectations about school and all of that. So that's really helpful if parents are just, whether they're new to the country or they've been here for a while, but seem to kind of just be a little in the dark on kind of some norms and expectations. That's a great handbook. And then over on the right here, you see Raising Teens in a New Country, a guide for the whole family. This is what we use for our Teens and Parents in a New Country book. So it's a handbook that parents and teens can use just together. Again, it comes in a few different languages, but we actually use it to guide facilitated conversations. So we do our 6-week series. You can see some of the different topics over on the right. We work with the parents and kids on week 1 to figure out which topics do you actually want us to focus on. And then each week it'll be a topic or two that will kind of facilitate dialogue around. So this is a really cool handbook that we have just, that's why I said like it's not an evidence-based program, but we're just kind of piloting using this handbook with the families we work with because parents were just, the tuning into teens was great, but we wanted to get them together with their kids. So definitely recommend BRICS resources. There's, a lot of parents ask us they're nervous about their kids being bullied. So there's some bullying resources on here. You can see all the different languages here that the different handbooks come in. So I definitely recommend you checking out the BRICS resources. There's Preparing for College and Financial Aid. That is so confusing even to, native English speaking American born families, but to have resources for new American families is really helpful. And then Switchboard is another one. This can be really helpful for staff. There's a lot of good training. Really recommend anybody that's going to be working with interpreters to do the Switchboard Working with Interpreters training, because there are just some things to know about working with interpreters. For example, like talking to the person and not to the interpreter, so that they feel kind of like a third party in the conversation. Just some basic principles that course can teach you. I like that they have these virtual reality 360 videos. Taking a school bus. For those of us who grew up in this country, if we weren't bussers, we probably rode the bus home with somebody sometime. We kind of know what an American school bus is like. A new American parent has likely never been on a school bus in their life. And so they can take this virtual reality tour to get a sense of what is my child experiencing after the school day. And then core, I think, yeah.
All right, we do have a question.
Sure.
Can you please talk a little bit about how do you involve and support dads, and how do you help moms bring dads along in healthy parenting practices?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from other people on this. It's something we always encourage. It's not something we've had a ton of success, right? You see 90% of the parents we work with are women. I think really asking parents when is a time where both parents can come, stressing to parents, the moms will say to us, can you do a program for husbands? And we're like, we really encourage folks to go home, share this information with your husbands. We invite husbands to our graduation ceremonies. Culturally, though, it's also some of the groups are kind of a safer space to be women only. So it's really a culture by culture, language by language thing we have to navigate. We don't have a ton of father engagement. Like I said, a lot of that is just cultural and traditional. If there is only one working person in the household, it's almost always going to be the father. So availability is just lower for that. We've definitely trained fathers in our curriculum. But I wouldn't say I have a great answer for that, other than encouraging moms to go home, share it with their husbands, talk about everything they're learning, bring dads in, to the graduations, ask them what they want, ask them what it would take to get them involved in the programming. And we have dads join here and there. but it's tough. We don't get a ton of it. So we just really end up encouraging the moms to share information with their families as much as they can. Our Spanish WhatsApp group has dads in it. Our Dari group, the women said, no, it's actually better if it's like just women culturally. It's just like kind of a safer space. Like there's kind of some limitations within the culture that like it's not appropriate for them to do certain things or say certain things if there's, you know, a man in the room that they're not married to, sort of thing. So for some cultures, it ends up just not working out as well, unfortunately. But please share in the chat if anybody does have some great resources for that. We'd love to hear. I went over switchboard, and then core is the last one. Unfortunately, sounds like new resources aren't being developed for core anymore because of some administrative decisions, but also just some really helpful info. What I want to point out from core are the cultural backgrounders. So they have, you know, if you're working with somebody from Rohingya, again, nobody expects you to be an expert on this culture, but reading a backgrounder of like, what is Rohingya and where are these people from and what did they go through and why are there a lot of Rohingya refugees in the US, something like that. You can get a lot of that information. They've got, you know, different countries on the website just to understand like what is the background and history of this country here, that there is even a refugee population from this country. It can really help to just help you kind of understand a little bit at least about the culture that they're coming from. So here's our email addresses and we've got 4 minutes. Any other questions? Michelle, I know you had wanted to pop on and say a couple words too, I think.
Yeah, the only thing that I have left while everyone's filling in their final questions or whatnot, I do have a feedback survey that I'd like to pop in. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to put the link in, and I also have a slide to share that has a QR code for that.
Cool.
Jill, you do have a question. When it comes to DV, how do you help with co-parenting when one parent don't want to deal with the abuse anymore, or if they were sent from the court or attorney?
I can't say we have a ton of experience in this. And this is one of the reasons we want to be able to do more one-on-one. We really do mostly group programming. So we would probably partner. If this were to come up for us, I would reach out to like Rahama, again, our kind of community partner who focuses on DV situations, and probably develop a strategy together with them that feels safe. I wouldn't want us to necessarily be the ones kind of taking the lead here, but I think it's always asking the parent. I mean, I guess it depends kind of which parent is the one who kind of no longer wants to be involved, right? If it's a mom who's leaving a DV situation and the dad still wants to be very involved, I would, right, want some like safety planning experts in that conversation. And I think helping the parents both set goals for themselves of, you know, what are they focused on? What's really important to them? How do we kind of help them develop their own action plans based on what's important to them? We offer kind of the evidence as they're figuring that out. Certainly, you know, if we could do like one-on-one sessions with anybody, we would, and hope to be. I don't know if that really answered your question. But I would definitely loop in like our partners in the DV space.
Have a
And if you don't have
lot of
any names,
kind words.
Aw.
Sorry, we have a lot of kind words in the chat. Everybody's saying thank you for sharing. Thank you for working with us. Like amazing stuff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work you're doing for these families now more than ever. New American families need us, and they need to know that they are wanted here. They are welcome here. They make our communities so much richer, just even from food alone, right? But the things we've learned from these families, like from collectivistic cultures, we're an individualistic society, right? We want people to be independent and unique, which creates a lot of isolation and loneliness. And there's so much to learn from these families around collectivistic cultures and just the value of community. And they've just taught me so much that I know I'm going to use with my own kids. So thank you so much for being here, everybody.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for your time, Joe. Wasa, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.